Welcome to the final instalment of the Create a Wonderful Life e-course. Here we'll be exploring insights, philosophies and the practicalities of Zone 4, your now. Over the next 3 videos we'll discover that now is where all the magic really happens and that life is a lot more fun when you're willing to play around with it a little. So let's get started by looking at your big experiment. In this video we'll get to understand the significance of now. We'll take a curious look at life's great test lab. I'll tell you what I believe are the most useful 3 little words in the world, and we'll explore the art of responding masterfully to the events of your life. The purpose of investing time focusing in the zone of your now is to be reminded that life is for living now. In fact, the previous 3 zones of the 4 zones of transformation are only important because of what they help you to achieve in the zone of your now. Zone 1, your world, is about getting clear on how you create your experience of life from the inside out so that you can experience it in the most wonderful way right now. Zone 2, your purpose, is for realizing where true happiness and fulfillment comes from so you can express it in meaningful ways and extend it out into the world now. And Zone 3, your purpose, is about identifying what you need to start doing now to turn your inspired vision into reality. Now is where all of your power is. Now is where all your happiness resides. Now is the only place that you're able to be the fullest, most positive expression of who you really are. Now is the perpetual starting point from which your wonderful life can unfold. So let's start exploring the practicalities of making the most of now. I often refer to life as being an elaborate test lab simply because, whether we realise it or not, each of us spends our entire lives experimenting with the law of cause and effect. We learn about and adapt to the world by trying things out, and based on the quality of the results that we appear to get, we shape our own unique strategies for navigating our way through life. The only issue is that because we tend to do a lot of our experimenting unconsciously or with an outside-in mindset, i.e. with our egos, we tend to draw our conclusions based on the distorted perception of our personal thinking rather than on the impartial nature of reality itself. So I'd like to encourage you now to really crank up the intensity of your curiosity and get ready to become a conscious creator. This is going to require you to put on your metaphorical white coat and adopt a scientific and experimental attitude towards your interaction with the world. If life was one big experiment and you were a scientist, what would your approach be like? Well, you probably wouldn't attach your emotional well-being to the idea that your current approach has to succeed in getting a specific result. If things don't turn out the way you expected, you wouldn't get frustrated. You'd get fascinated. You'd recognise that what some people might call failure is actually just a valuable source of learning that's a vital ingredient for eventual success. You'd see uncertainty as something to be celebrated, that if we want to experience anything differently, we have to happily step into the unknown. And you'd keep changing and tweaking your approach based on your continuous learning until you see the outcome that you've been working for. Increasing your curiosity and becoming a playful scientist means raising your consciousness and seeing that the law of cause and effect is completely impersonal. Many people go through life with the identity of a stimulus-response being, i.e. stuff happens in the world and they have no choice other than to respond in the way that they do because to them the quality of their emotional well-being is driven by outside triggers. If someone's rude to them, they have to get upset because that's the way we're wired, right? Or if they have an accident, they curse their luck and wonder what terrible thing they must have done in a previous life to have deserved it. Living life from the outside in on autopilot means that the quality of our experience will always be attributed to the quality of the external stimulus. But as soon as we see the true inside-out nature of reality, we recognise that the quality of our experience has far more to do with the quality of our response to the stimulus. You'll never be fully in control of everything that happens in your life, but the great news is that you're always fully in control of what you do with what happens, and that is where your power is. The key to mastering the game of life is to know that you're not a stimulus response creature, that between stimulus and response there's always a space where you can choose what to think and what to do next. And the size of that space depends on your readiness to take a pause, get fascinated, and consciously design your response based on the kind of experience that you'd like to have. For example, notice what happens when you decide to move from impatience to compassion, or from agitation to understanding, or from worry to proactiveness. In any moment, you have an infinite spectrum of choice available to you. To get something that you don't currently have usually requires you to do something that you haven't yet done, and to work out what that is, you have to be willing to experiment. One of the great myths of life is that we think that we're supposed to know how to get it right before it's happened. And this belief typically causes us to behave in one of two ways. We either convince ourselves that our strategy is the right one, and so blame the world, other people, or circumstances when the outcome doesn't match our expectation of what should have happened, or we become so nervous about making a bad decision that we don't take any action at all. I believe that the most elegant way to let life unfold is to approach it from a space of blissful ignorance, and that the most useful 3 little words we can adopt are, "I don't know," followed up with, "but I'm going to have some fun finding out." "I don't know" means that you're free to take action with no fixed expectation, because you're just experimenting with possibilities. It also means that you don't have to take results personally. If the result isn't what you want, you can say, isn't that fascinating? And I wonder what I can do differently next time to get a better outcome. When we take life and ourselves less seriously, the world is our playground. We can create a wonderful experience of life through the filter of our childlike curiosity and let the learning be our guide. Responding to life in a way that serves our best interests is as much an art as it is a science. So here are some guidelines for becoming more masterful at the art of responding. First and foremost is to remember that you feel your thinking. Despite the fact that it often does feel as though your experience is being generated from the outside, you only ever experience your thoughts about what you believe is going on. So maximising the space between stimulus and response starts with paying a visit to the projection booth of the cinema inside your head. Recognise that what happens to you is nowhere near as important as what you do with what happens to you. Knowing that the quality of your experience will ultimately be based on your actions and attitudes means you're invited to design your response in accordance with the outcome that you desire. And give yourself permission to fail, because the quicker you start failing, the sooner you'll be able to act on your learning and ultimately achieve a successful result. And know that there's a big difference between making a mistake and making a bad decision. A mistake is simply doing something that you believe to be the right thing in the moment that later produces a result that you don't want. A bad decision is to not do anything to rectify the mistake and to let the consequences of it define you forevermore. And finally, be patient with others. They're doing the best with what they've got and with what they currently know. And the best way to influence others is to be the change that you wish to see in them. Now, before I sign off, I just want to share with you these words from the amazing Viktor Frankl. You can take anything from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, the ability to choose one's own attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Now, your exercise for this session is to use the big experiment worksheet. Just pick an area of life in which you'd like to start experiencing some different results. Identify ways in which you could start responding differently, and then get busy being fascinated by what happens next. Coming up next, I'd like to show you how to deepen your relationship with the present moment in a video called Mindfulness. But until then, happy experimenting, and I'll speak to you soon.